Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, wherever you are in the world. A very warm welcome to a joint Agilexi Google Looker on a GCP Masterclass. I hope everyone's keeping well and looking forward to the summer as best we can. As always, some quick housekeeping. We'll be aiming to complete this class in 2 hours. We're covering quite a bit, but we've condensed and summarized it to keep it as clear as possible and as digestible in the time that we have available. Me and my co-instructors, we're really looking forward to this session and taking you through some of the great things that Looker has in terms of integration with GCP. So, quick introductions. My name is Imran Hussain. I'm a data lead with Agilexi. I've been doing some various aspects or variations of data warehousing, BI, or data science for the better part of 20 years. Started out in SAP, so in the SAP space rather, so covered quite a few industries. And at the moment, I advise customers on how to efficiently solve their business problems using data specifically on the GCP cloud platform. So that's me. I'm very pleased also to be joined by Sebastian Fabri from Google and my colleague Saeed Kasim from Agilexi. Sebastian is a sales engineer with Google and works with strategic partners to help support Looker implementations. He's also worked directly with enterprise adopters to help change their approach to BI and data. And prior to Google, Sebastian advised FTSE 100 companies on implementing data strategies, leading to better business decisions. Hi, Sebastian. Thank you for joining us.
Hey. Thank you for having me.
No worries. A pleasure, as always, Sebastian, you know that. I'm also pleased to be joined by my colleague, Saeed Kasim, who is a data scientist at Agilexi. He has several years' experience as a data scientist, previously at a cloud-based marketing SaaS solution provider called Cloud IQ. He's got a master's in machine learning from UCL and is a Google Cloud certified data engineer and has done a lot of interesting stuff across GCP and Looker. Hi, Saeed.
Hi, Imran. Thank you, man.
No worries. So in terms of the agenda today, we'll be covering this in two parts. We'll kick off with a quick introduction in terms of Agilexi and who we are as a GCP solution provider. We'll dive quickly then into part one, which is a quick recap of Looker, key Looker concepts, and Sebastian will take us through building a BI solution from scratch using Looker, specifically with BigQuery. Moving on from that, we'll be looking at integration points with GCP, specifically Looker actions, and using actions with cloud functions on GCP side to extend an analysis for a business scenario that we will introduce in part two. In terms of questions and interaction, for those of you who've been on the Google Cloud Data User Group, you know we like Slido. So any questions that you have at any point during the session, put them into Slido. We've got quite a few attendees, so it's going to have to be, we will try and address questions at the end. And the intention is for the class to be a mixture of a type-along session along with some show and tells on maybe some of the more administrative side aspects of these of the class. So that's a bit about us. On that note, I'm going to jump to a quick poll to get a view of who we are, who we have attending on the class. So, let's go to the poll. So we have two questions. First question is, where are you in your Looker journey? What is your motivation for the class? And again, it's interesting for us to know that, and also it helps us position the class at the content at the right level. So feel free to open that link on Slido with the activity code and let us know where you are in your Looker journey. I will give everyone a few moments to put in some submissions. So it looks like most of us are learning. Some are actively considering Looker from the submissions that we have. So I think that's interesting. So it's largely an audience of a kind of coming at this from an educational aspect and learning about Looker as a tool, and presumably there will be GCP interests within that. So we'll give it a few more seconds for that to complete, but I think we've got a clearer direction on that. The second question is which role best describes you in terms of your context with Google, GCP, or with Looker, in terms of your role. And again, that's always interesting in terms of understanding the perspective and the context that you have with Looker as a BI tool. So data engineers, analysts, seems to be fairly equal spread at the moment. There are further options down here, by the way, that can be chosen as well. But we have the data engineers are out in force, followed by BI developers and data leads. Again, I'll give that a few moments to complete. But it looks like a fairly even spread. Great. So that said, so thank you for everybody who's contributed to the poll. The poll will remain open, and as I said, Q&A, throw it into Slido, and we'll try our best to address those. So a bit about Agilexi. So as a solution provider, we have 100% coverage of GCP platform from a data perspective. So we're a Looker partner, we're a Google Cloud partner, and also we are a Google technology partner. We have a data-related app on the Google Marketplace. As a company, we're focused entirely on data, a lot of experience in data, so cumulatively 35 plus years working in BI and data in various aspects. And that's across BI, data analytics, and machine learning as a data value chain. One of the things that we think distinguishes us or defines us as a company is we look at data in a holistic manner in terms of people and processes. So that's recognizing that data, even though it today exists in a number of specialisms, are increasing, that are growing and evolving all the time. There are deep interdependencies and connections between them, and they really, to most effectively use data, the more we understand and effectively bring together the different contexts in terms of the way people use them and use data capabilities and the way they are applied or wrapped around business processes, the more effectively the end outcome can be. So that's one aspect of how we work, and we combine that with a focus on Google Cloud. So we're all in on Google Cloud Platform in terms of services, and we aim to efficiently leverage those solutions, those services that in a way that are business and team centric. Some of you will know that Agilexi is a sponsor of the Google Cloud Data User Group, so that's a community effort that we do, and in strict sense, this event comes under that auspices to some degree. So anyone who's working with Google Cloud Data, who's interested in knowing or learning more about how to use all the different ways of using the Google Cloud Platform for solutions around data, I would highly recommend that you come along and join some of the online meetups that we have happening probably around once or twice a month at the moment. So that said, we will now go into part one of the class, which is building a BI solution with Looker. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to Sebastian, who will lead on this particular section. Sebastian, I believe you have the screen.
Great, thank you, Imran. Yeah, so I also have a few slides to show you, but it's really just to kind of make sure that Looker is positioned in the right place and everyone knows what to expect, and then we'll switch over to actually typing and doing things ourselves. So yes, Looker was recently acquired by Google Cloud, and really we're positioned as the native BI platform or even data platform to enable secure access to data and do that in a way that's near real time and kind of delivering that information where and when you need it. And that takes part in different ways, right? So there's the basic core value of Looker is always going to be the same, right? So Looker is able to connect to your database within GCP. Very often it's going to be BigQuery, but it could also be one of the other Google databases. And through that connection, we're actually able to describe the data, describe the information. Looker has this modeling layer, semantic modeling layer, which we call LookML. And that's where we actually spend most of the next hour together. And that's where you're able to describe what's available in those databases, but also kind of capture all the governance. And what I mean by that is the definition of the derived fields and calculations and the KPIs, all the things that people need, people and machines actually need to do their reporting, to do their analysis, and to use data wherever that needs to be. Now, that semantic layer is tied to our in-database architecture, which essentially means that we leave the data where it is. We leave the data in BigQuery in this case. And the way that we're going to be able to create the report is by generating a SQL request for each of those reports. So we're not grabbing a whole set of raw data and doing stuff with it. Instead, we're really pinpointing the relevant information for each of the reports and just querying that part of the data, and letting BigQuery in this case do all the effort, kind of all the compute, all the big data leverage that Looker doesn't need to do essentially. And then lastly, API first and cloud native, and that's what enables us to actually serve many different use cases. So today, within the application, we'll have a look at modern BI analytics. And what we mean by that is self-service, dashboards, and those sort of things. Now, you can actually take all of the work that we've done today and just embark it into another application, into another website, into a portal, and have embedded analytics, right? So that would be integrated insights, for example. We can also leverage all of that and actually enrich it with different workflows, right? Where does the data need to be? Can we make that automated? Can we want to provide that as options for the users to actually be able to interact from Looker with the data, from Looker with other applications, etc. And we'll see examples of that in part 2 of this webinar, of this session. And then lastly, in the blue box here, custom application. That's really when you have a specific vision that you want to establish, and you're probably going to be leveraging the API that Looker offers that allows you to still maintain that governance, but actually now access data via programmatically, via API calls. You get JSON files, and you do whatever you want with it. So kind of like more that programming heavy, UI heavy development, but then Looker in the background providing you the information that you need in a way that is secure and real time and governed. I mentioned like within GCP, very often will be coupled with BigQuery, and the reason is that we very kind of work hand in hand and complement one another, right? The Looker is made for cloud databases. Looker is made for accessing large amount of data in a database, right? And that's exactly what BigQuery is able to provide. Looker allows you to leverage all the power of BigQuery, allows you to put a friendly face, a friendly interface on top of BigQuery for people that don't know anything about SQL, don't know anything about BigQuery machine learning, and all the BigQuery functionalities are in there. And at the same time, without losing any of those capabilities. So we'll be able to leverage all the functions, all nesting, partitioning, and all those things without any problem. And then we give you all the controls you need for the making sure that you don't just run away with costs with BigQuery. Last slide here is about actually defining some of the terms that we're going to be seeing. And just before I start presenting, I noticed that the resolution is a little bit too low, so it's kind of hard to read. So I've got PDF that I'm going to switch into. But essentially, these are the different layers that kind of work together in the LookML, in the modeling layer, to come together and provide that interface, provide that ability to make API calls to the underlying data, right? So we have fields contained in views, contained in explorers, contained inside of models, contained inside of projects. And so to go a little bit into that, I've got the PDF version here, which should be easier to read on the screen. So I'll just scroll down through that a little bit. And so I'm starting from the most detailed one. We have the fields here in reddish. And these are going to be the smallest component that we're going to be dealing with. So they can be a simple column that exists in the tables, or they can be any other transformation that you want to apply on those columns, on that data, whether it's across multiple ones, combining them, anything. And then you make that available to the API. You make that available to users in the interface as dimensions and measures. Now, all these fields are contained within views here on the left in gray. And so the views contain the dimensions and measures. And very often, but not always, they represent a table that exists in the database. And so we can see something that we'll be recreating today here. There's another view from another table with different dimensions inside of it. We'll see that we have multiple views for all the different tables that exist. Now, because view represent those tables, there's going to actually be a relationship between those tables, just like you would declare the joins in SQL. And the way and the place that that's defined is within the explorers in blue on the right here, which allows us actually to define that join logic between the different views and control the entry points into the data for the business users and what tables and fields they are going to have access to. So we'll also have to create one of these. And then the explorers themselves are all declared in one file, typically, which would be a model file. So you can have multiple explorers defined in a model file, and that's also going to contain the details of the connections, maybe the details of caching, maybe other sort of like high-level information that would be applied to multiple data sets. Now, you could also have multiple model files if you have certain security concerns where you are required to partition access to the data, partition access to the explorers. You could end up with multiple models. And so the totality of all these views and all these model files are what is called a project. And so actually the first thing that we'll do today is to create a project. So each of us will be able to have their own project, and we'll take it from there. We'll switch over to an actual instance. So this is the instance of Looker where you should all be able to log into agilexi.eu.looker.com, and you should have received an invitation in your emails. You might not see exactly the same screen as I do because they do get personalized based on what, in this case, what content I've opened recently and looked at, which in your case might be nothing or might be different content. But the look and feel is going to be very similar with a browse area, an explore area, a develop area. And then today I'm an admin, so I can actually see the connection page. So I will walk you through that, and then we'll get started together on the develop side of things. If you imagine getting your first instance of Looker, it's probably going to be very empty. And so indeed, the first step of your analysis of getting access to data is to connect Looker to your database, which in this case, to simplify things and simplify back and forth, we've established for you and comes with a dummy data set. So we will actually be using Oh, and I've been told that I need to zoom a bit here. So for the rest of the session, I'm going to be zooming to make this a bit bigger on everyone's screen. We're going to be using a BigQuery connection here. And if we can simply have a look at it, see how this was set up, it's a combination of information of the project, information of the database type, what sort of account we want to be using, encrypted information in terms of passwords and stuff, obviously. And quite simply, that's all that's needed. So we'll be establishing that JDBC connection and getting started. You can even simply test at the bottom that this connection is successful. No problem. So we'll be using that today. So if you'd like to join me in creating your own model, the way this is going to work is essentially I'm going to type as I talk. I will be taking some breaks here and there so that everyone's able to catch up and type as well. However, if you do get lost, or if you don't want to type all the way along, although I would recommend that you do, otherwise it's going to be a fairly slow demo. But if you do get lost, we have this model here called GCP Masterclass that actually contains the end result of the work that we're going to do today. So different a model, different views, etc. This is sort of the end result so that you can refer to it in the future. You can refer to it today if you get lost. But what really we want to do is get started by clicking on our developer menu, and each of us actually activating the development mode. So what this toggle does is that it will allow us to modify models. It will also allow us to create new projects. And it's fairly obvious when you're in it because that you have a big purple bar at the top. Now, back in that develop menu, there is this Manage LookML project option, and that's where we'll be getting started. So as I click on that, you may or may not see other projects. Not very important. Right now, what we want to do is just create a new one anyway. So you have in the top right corner this new LookML project option that I'm going to select. And it's a simple page where you can enter your name of the project. I would encourage everyone to try to make it unique. So maybe use some initials, your part of your name, with a second keyword like training or demo or test or something, just so that it stays yours. We're not going to be connecting it to Git or anything like that, so it is going to remain within just your developer mode today. And then what we want to do is, as a starting point, generate the model directly from our database schema, and we'll simply leave the connection as BigQuery. Now, we do have one more option to specify here, and that is whether we want Looker to parse all the data that is available through this connection, or whether we want to start with a single table. And sort of for the sake of showing you more capabilities, I would suggest starting with just a single table, and we'll make sure to add some more in there. So it's a problem. We can go and add more tables anytime. The table we start with is going to be our transactional table, which is called, in this case, order_items. And once you've entered the name, confirm the select connection, confirm the table you want to generate from, then we'll be clicking on create the project. There you go. That was pretty quick. So the interface now has generated your model. We were starting with this table then, I'll repeat again, called order items. And you might notice that there, as a welcome message, you get a big red cross. which is actually an error message. So there is currently in this version of Looker a very small bug, I dare say, that when you generate the model with a unique table, it essentially comments out a bunch of text here, and the commenting out goes slightly too far and comments out what the last bracket that we need to actually use. So what we want to do, in this case, I just selected everything.
Sebastian,
Sorry.
sorry to interrupt. Can you hear me?
Yes?
Actually, I was keeping an eye on the Slido, and I noticed that people do not actually have the option to create a new project at the moment. Unfortunately, I'm going to go into the admin panel and try to sort that out. Maybe a couple of minutes, and I'll let you know. Sorry for the technical error, guys. Let me work on that very quick.
Okay, no problem. So while he fixes that, maybe it's a good opportunity to talk to you guys about security. So there is a lot of granular options for security in Looker, both in terms of features and in terms of the data itself. In this case, the mistake, the issue we're encountering is to do with the feature security. Each user in Looker is given a role. And that role is comprised on access to a set of models, right? As well as access to a set of permissions. And those permissions can be fairly granular. So you can see here this tree of permissions that exist. So Saeed is looking into what the issue is. It could be that you are not given the option to create or modify models. It could be that you don't have access to certain models. So it's going to go and fix that for us. So that's the feature access part of Looker. So things like, do we have access to data? So can you even see reports? But also things like, are you allowed to download data? Are you allowed to schedule data? Are you allowed to share? And it's all those sort of things. Some clients for GDPR controls, for example, have disabled downloads and sharings, whereas other clients very thoroughly encourage it. The other part that I'll mention on security is more based on the data side of things. And that's typically a combination of attributes that are set at the user level, and also typically very much synchronized with the user management of the company. So the user management system of the company through SAML or LDAP or Google Auth or Open Connect, things like that. And essentially, by automatically populating these values, these become attributes that we can refer to in the model and leverage to actually make sure that the SQL that Looker is generating for these reports is going to be specific to aid the measures and dimensions that we want to see, but also specific to the users in terms of what they're allowed to see, right? So are there certain columns to be hidden? Are there certain rule level security? So only see data from a certain customers, only see data from a certain country, only see data related to certain marketing campaign, wherever that is. They can also be slightly more global. So different users should be pointed to different schemas, or different users should be pointing to different tables. Things like that can be automated. So provide a unique interface, even provide a unique dashboard, and share it across all the users. And then based on who is the user that's logged in, based on who is opening this, automatically Looker can go and request the correct pieces of information securely from your database and returning that, just so that you have less content to manage, right? If you have 20 departments, the ability to create a single report and share it across them is great compared to having to maintain and create 20 individual reports.
Hi, Seb. Actually, now it should be okay. You mentioned earlier that it was a a security issue with one of the features. I had not selected the manage model, so now I believe everyone should have access to be able to create a new model. Again, sorry for the technical difficulty, guys. And please do let us know via Slido if you have any other issues. Thank you.
Thanks for keeping an eye on that side, and thanks for fixing it.
Thank you, Said. And Sebi, maybe an idea just to start again, or just at least refer back to the create project section, just so everyone else can pick it up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll keep mine created. I'm not going to generate a second one, but with the steps that were taken was simply to turn your developer mode on, so the big purple bar, this big purple toggle. B, click on manage looking at projects, which I'll open here in a separate tab. C, click on new looking at project in the top right corner. Give this a name, a unique name if possible, and then we started in this case with a unique table. So these were the different things. And then if you simply click on the create project button, that's gonna do that for you. So give it a name. The connection is BigQuery, and we are currently building a single view, single table called order items. Now, clicking on this should bring you to the previous screen I was looking at. And I was mentioning a tiny little bug where actually too many things are being commented out. But we don't actually need all of this right now. So the easiest is probably to just grab from line 14. You can just select all the way to the bottom and replace it all by this curly bracket, so that the curly bracket opens and the curly bracket closes and the error message just disappears. Once you've done that, you do have what you need to save, right? So there's a save button in the top right corner. There's also shortcuts, so Control S or Command S allows you to save the file. Now that we've corrected this slight mistake, what's actually happened, right? Looker looked in the database connection for that one table called order items and created, as a result, 2 files for us. The first one is the one that's selected by default, which is the model file, where we simply have those things I was saying were kind of high level, right? So which connection are we using? Some information about caching, and some. So this is, where's the, actually no, is this? Not the right keyword. This is caching information. And below here is where we're actually going to be declaring or explorers, so which are the entry point into the data. In this case, there's a single entry point because we have a single table, order items, and you can actually see that on the left side in the files under the view folder directory, where you have this one file called order items. Within here, Looker has automatically for you created the name, so which table are we looking at, and a dimension for each and every of the columns within this table. So that's all been generated automatically. Additionally, because the Explorer has been declared, we actually directly have access. So quick shortcut for you, next to the name of the model, there's this little down arrow that allows you to go to directly go to any of the explorers that are defined. So, and I tend to open things in different tabs so I can switch back and forth more easily. So I'll open that in a new tab. And you can see the interface, so this Explorer interface where that allows you to combine all these elements together. You have access to all the different columns as dimensions, and then just the one measure to get started. quickly, just to get an understanding, all the elements all the dimensions that are defined in the model are available here right now. I can select them, and that's actually writing SQL for me. All right. The way this is generated is tied to the definition in the model file. We'll go and have a look at that and add some stuff ourselves and modify it. We can run this, click the run button. You can also do Control-Enter, Control-Return, or Command-Return, and that's going to run the query for you. Essentially, that query was sent, and then, in this case, BigQuery returns result sets to us. Right? So this is the very basic information, right? Each column exists dimension, and we have a count. We can start counting things. Great. Your users are probably going to be slightly more demanding than that, right? For example, we got a sale price. What about creating some sum and averages? We have order IDs. We have user IDs. What about getting some information about those things? Some more information, some more detail about those things, and bring that in here. All right, so let's have a look at how that happens. Essentially, anything new that you want to make available, anything new that you want to create and define, that happens back in the model. So we've got this one file here, the order items view, where we have all these different dimensions. And let's add a couple of measures first, and we'll talk about dimensions and things later on. Although the principle is basically always the same. We have this sale price dimension, line 66, which as a dimension actually is not necessarily very useful. What this would do, if I selected it, is just return a list of all the different sale prices, right? It's probably much more useful as a measure, as something that you can sum and average, etc. So don't want my business users to select it by accident, so I'm actually going to hide it. The reason I'm not deleting it is because I want to reuse that. I'm going to reuse it as a developer, but I want to hide it from my business users. So now this parameter called hidden allows you to do just that. All right. I kind of keep on scrolling. I tend to keep dimensions in one place and then measures kind of further down in the file. The order of definitions does not actually matter, but I just find it more convenient to find things back in the files afterwards, whether it's really up to your preference. Now, what I'll do is for now just add a measure that allows me to sum that price, right? Total sales. You might notice that as you start typing, there is an autocomplete that you can leverage with the tab button. If you need to go up and down, you can use your arrows. In this case, I'm simply going to say, okay, this measure is called total sales. I want it to sum one of the fields I already have. I want it to sum the dimension called sale price. And the way we're defining that is with this purple writing with a $sign. This is referencing that previous dimension called sale price. All right, and I'm also going to go ahead and add a little bit of nice finish by giving it a value format. The things that are required are really just a type and what do you want to apply it to, but it's also nice to add things like descriptions or labels if required, or
Seb,
yeah,
quick request. Could you zoom in slightly on where you're typing?
Volume more?
Because the resolution is, I think, will be a bit of a challenge for some of the attendees. And for all the attendees, everything we're doing will be recorded. So if you miss a step or you fall behind, don't worry. You'll have time straight after this session and through to tomorrow to view the recording and rerun any steps that you've missed or you'd like to clarify. That's better. Thanks, Seb. Much appreciated.
No problem. Yeah, I had already zoomed a bit, but let's just zoom a bit more. No problem. it might make it look a little bit interesting in the other parts of the tool, but that doesn't matter too much. I can keep zooming in and out. Right, so if you missed anything that I was typing, we hit the sale price dimension. Not a big deal if you haven't done it. Much more interesting to just go ahead and create the measure here. Total sales, type sum, SQL price, etc. And also don't forget to save once you've done that. And actually, the changes that you make in here within your development mode are available to yourself straight away. So once you type this, if you switch back to your Explorer, which you might have kept open in a different tab, as I have, or if not, you can also reaccess from the down arrow, go to Explore Other Items. Same thing, very much so. If you have left it open in a previous tab, you probably just want to refresh the page, and that's going to go and take into account the changes. And now you should have a new measure called total sales, which you can also select and add to your report. In the background, if we click on the SQL button here in the middle, it simply tells you that it's doing a sum of the sale price, right? But we're deciding what this looks like. I can get my results, etc. You can combine this with any other fields. So if you want to look at this over time or things like that, well, it's probably the only two options here, over time or by status. You can absolutely do that. So I'll leave this up here in case anyone hasn't done typing it. In the meanwhile, I'm going to create a couple more, or one more measure, let's say, which would be more or average. If you're lagging a little bit behind, don't worry about the second one. Just make sure to have the total sales defined, and that'll be good enough for now. Now, I'm actually reusing a lot of the same information, so I could have just copy and pasted this down. I wanted the advantage of text, right? Rather than having to click in all the places, I can do a lot of copy and paste and things. All of these I'm referring to the same dimension. So back on line 66, where my sale price is defined, it's actually my single source of truth of how sale price is defined. Any modification of the sale price here is going to flow down to modify my sum and my average and my other places that I'm using this. Cool. So that's kind of creating measures, right? And there's a fairly long list of different things you can do. We'll create a different type of measure in a little bit, but that's kind of the key thing. Now, the other thing we noticed when we're looking at the Explorer area is that the fields are available. We do have loads of IDs, and those will join to some of those tables that we did not import in the first place. So we'll probably want to add them now, and that way they're available in this interface. And so pretty straightforward. On the left side is a plus button. Click on that. And whilst there are lots of options available here, the one we want is just to create a view from a table. So create view from table, click on the plus button, and then select create view from table. This is actually going to load all the different data sets that we have access to within this connection. And we'll then be able to select the ones that we want. Other item has already been done, so don't need to worry about that one. But you can just select a bunch and make sure you can select all of them, or you can select at least minimum. Do bring in users. But either way.
Hi, Seb.
Yeah.
Quick point. A lot of people have mentioned that they currently can't access the Explore for order items. Is the order items Explore on the model file that was created?
Yeah, so have a look, make sure that this here exists.
Okay. So yes, guys, please try to add this and save it before trying to access. Could you access the explore button? I mean the explore for all the items.
Oh, right. Yes. One more thing. If for some, so if this is there, but you're not seeing it in the drop down, which is possible, that simply just refresh the page. And once you've refreshed the page, it will be available in the drop down.
Okay. Some other people are saying it gives them a 4.4 error when they try to access the all the items page. Are
So
you able
make
to access that from for your
so
side?
what it could be here, make sure that you are in developer mode. If you're not in developer mode, you won't be able to access your own. And make sure that this model file doesn't have any errors. And then these are the two things. It should just work afterwards.
Thank you, Seb.
Yeah, sorry. The other thing I should have mentioned earlier is normally this session is run in person, right? We would be in the same room, and Imran and Saeed would be able to sort of run around and debug on the fly as things happen. Obviously, this is a little bit of an experiment, so we're hitting a few snags here and there. I hope this is manageable for everyone. Yeah, hope it works. The second part of the session today is going to be much more a little bit of copy pasting and some watching and explaining from Saeed. So you're much less likely to get stuck in the second part, even if you have not completed the first one. So I thank you for bearing with me here.
Just to add to that, if there are any issues or any obstacles that anyone encounters, feel free to reach out to us directly after the class, and we're really happy to help you through that on a one-to-one basis. Over to you, sir.
Cool. So let's see, we have the Explorer. Hopefully we can access that in here. What we were trying to do was, yes, import new tables. So back in the model, the plus button allows us to create a view from a table, and that then allows us to go and select which tables we do want to create. Now, I was saying, don't be afraid to select more of them, because there is no issue really. We're not importing all this data. All we're doing is just reading the schemas of this table, right? So all we've done essentially is create a few text files that, yes, represent those tables, but there's no data imported or anything like that, which is why you are so quick, and which is why all of this is straight away available. Now, what I would like to do is kind of fairly simply just make the data about user, the data from this user table, available and to join with the transaction information. So this table here that was automatically generated as a view file, I can actually refer to it in my model and join it to this Explorer using a parameter called join, right? Unsurprisingly. So we want to refer to the user table. We want to select the type of join. In this case, I'm going to pick a left outer join. We want to define fields. How, if you were writing this join in SQL, what would you join on? Right. So we're going to be declaring this here, and that's why in this case the parameter is SQL_on. And we get an autocomplete referring to the fields of order items and to the field of users. So if I start typing user ID, it's going to give me access to the two that I care about. Hopefully you can actually see the pop-ups and the suggestions as I type. If you don't on my side, just start typing on your side and they will appear. No problem. So we were just saying that order items dot user ID, so the field called user ID from my order items table is equal to the field called ID from my users table. Pretty simple join. And there is one special thing that Looker does require you to do and declare, and that is a relationship. So it's about cardinality. It's about, are we doing one-to-one joins? Is it many-to-one, etc.? Allowing Looker to identify which table is being fanned out and ensuring that any calculation across this fan out is actually still correct, which is a classic SQL problem that Looker takes care of for you, and making this modeling very simple and preventing non-technical users from actually making errors by joining tables without understanding them. So all of that is taken care of for you as long as you declare the relationship between the tables. And technically, you also need to declare the primary keys of those tables within each of the file. But in this case, that was done automatically for you. So once I've saved this, again, if I go back to my Explore page, I would just need to refresh it. So just make sure here, Explore, bracket, join, name of the table we join, another bracket, defining the type, defining the fields, the relationship, and then close those two brackets. To be honest, if you make a mistake, Looker will tell you that you have too many brackets or that you're missing sums and things like that. So you should be guided through this. But if I go back to my Explore area now, on my left side, right now you see there's nothing new. I'll just go ahead and refresh the web page. And now we have access to both order items field and user fields. Another quick shortcut here. So you can remove fields by clicking on them. You can remove fields by clicking on the gear here. You can also clear the whole thing by doing Control-K. What I want to do is just show you that if you select fields from both tables, essentially Looker can figure out, well, can use the join that we just declared to write the SQL correctly, right? So what happens is, as I select fields, am I selecting something from users? No. But when I do select something from users, then that join gets added. Same way that at the moment it's just a select from, but if I add a filter on anything, that's going to be adding a where clause for me. So all of these things happen automatically. We could also be, let's see, pivoting some of these dimensions, and that's going to complicate the SQL a little bit, but you don't really need to worry about it, especially not if you are a business user, right? If you're a business user, you're really just working with this table here. Okay, I want to pivot traffic source, and I can see the two things, and I'm going to run that and get my results from the database. The data is pretty old, so I'm just going to say in the year 2018. And there you go. Now we have data, and we can go and visualize that over time, and all that together. Perfect. So that works. So we quickly did created the model, added some tables that were not there originally, added a join, created a new measure or two. And all those things are now different elements, different dimensions and measures that we can combine in whichever way we want to create a report. So probably just keeping an eye on the time here. I'll show you a couple more examples of dimensions and measures in the LookML, and then we'll take that to actually create a quick dashboards so that you kind of see the flow from A to B to C. And then we'll take stock of time and see whether we switch to phase 2 or whether I'll got a few more things up my sleeves I can show you today. So let's think about a real kind of a real use case here. Things that people might care about, right? Especially now these days, like online, everyone's looking at things online. And one thing that I noticed when I was running my status report is that one of the values is return. Right, so it's great to have so many people ordering stuff, but are they actually returning a lot of it? Right, and we get a sense here in this data set that the number is going to be pretty low, but is there a difference across time or regions or gender or traffic source of where the users were coming from, things like that, right? So let's have a look at that. Let's create some metrics around that. The first things that I'm going to create is actually a way to easily differentiate between orders that have been returned and orders that have not. So to do that, I'm going to create a new dimension. So just here, doesn't matter where in the file you're doing that, just pay attention and make sure you're creating it in the order items view, since that is where the status dimension exists. It makes the most sense to declare that here. So I start typing dimension is returned is going to be my question. And there are different types of measures, and just like there are different types of measure, there are also different types of dimensions. So it could be a string, it could be a number, it could be different loads of different dates that you can see here, right? Location, duration, etc. But in this case, it's a simple question, so I'm going to use a yes/no type. And this type of dimension is quite simply going to return a yes or a no. And so to kind of help Looker decide whether it's a yes or a no, I'm going to give it a condition. In this case, I was saying that there is a status that is returned. So my yes is going to be if the status of the order is returned, then that means it is returned. So that would be a yes for us. Again, I can save this. That's going to be automatically available in my Explore area. Now I'm going to kind of skip a step and go ahead and reuse this straight away, because I know that I can now, I would be able to use that and see, okay, number of items that have been returned, number of items that have not been returned, and use that as a filter, for example. But if I wanted to compare the number of items that have been returned versus the ones that have not, or maybe split that across different metrics, it is useful to have a dedicated measure just for that. So it's in addition to having a count, I could have a return count. Right. And so this is going to be a type count, just like the one above. Because it's a type count, you don't actually need to specify what field you want to count. It's automatically going to pick up the primary key. But you do, in this case, I need to tell Looker to somehow filter out and only count fields that are, only count the ones that have been returned. And so we have this filters option that's going to be able to help me just do that. And if I have a blank, just like right now, I'm not 100% sure what goes into these brackets. On the right side, there is a quick help that's going to tell me exactly what it does. So in this case, filter, I would enter an identifier and a string. So in this case, it's the field called is return, and the value of my string is yes, because it's a yes/no dimension. Anywhere you are in the model, you have all this help on the right. So if you are curious about anything else, obviously you can see there's loads of different parameters. I'm not going to have time to go through every single one of them. But if you yourself want to know more, you can just click on it. And that's going to bring you to the documentation. It's going to bring you to details of what it does, how to use it, and some examples as well. All right, so what we've done is we've created one dimension here called is returned, and we've created one measure here called return count. And those two things, again, are going to appear now in my order items. So I'll just refresh the page to make sure that these new changes are taken into account. And I can see them on the left side. There is an is return yes no that I could use, right? So I could add this to my table. It's a little bit redundant in this case, but I can see that it should tell me yes or no against each of the status. So no, 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 yes for return. Okay, cool. This one works. Perfect. Now, let's also check my return count. Select that, add it to my table, click run. Let's get our results. We should have mostly zeros and then one values for, sorry, one, apparently can't select that. One value for my return. That's also working. And it might be interesting to just have a quick look at what the SQL is for this thing. That's kind of being taken care of automatically for me. And in this case, it's simply a case statement within the count that's based on the condition that I have provided, right? So Looker is taking these bits of code and compiling them, assembling them in the right order, in the right way to create the SQL that's going to give me my answer. Now, probably lastly for today, I'll go ahead and create another little measure here, because one thing that I really care about is that it's good to have empirical numbers, but really, what's my percentage, right? What's the return percentage? And that would be another thing that I want to calculate. That would be another measure. In this case, it would be a number, because I'm going to divide one thing by another, kind of like manually writing the calculation myself, rather than using one of the pre-made functions of BigQuery in this case. So in SQL, I'm simply going to refer to my return count and divide that by my total count. And because we want this to look neat and we want this to actually look like a percentage, I'm going to go and add format of percent, and then 2 decimals is what the number means in this case. And don't forget to save. So we've had, these are the new things that we've added in this time. We have one new dimension, one new measure, 2 new measures. And if really the only thing you care about is this return percentage, nothing stops you from actually hiding some of these other metrics away from the front end, right? If you want to keep your front end nice and tidy and you want to kind of minimize what's available to people so that they don't get lost, you can still go and hide them, etc. Okay, so this is like the return percentage is something that's a little bit maybe more interesting and that we can actually probably use to create some reports here, right? So let's start maybe by looking at a split just between genders, right? So I could search for this field, for example. So gender. And we have my new return percentage that I can select. And I can run that, get my results directly from BigQuery. And then one thing that we didn't really discuss is all the different visualizations that are available, right? So very small difference between the 2% here. But you can just about see it on this graph here. To make sure that it's kind of clear, I'm just going to add quickly the actual value, so some value labels on this plot. And what I want to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and use this to create a dashboard that is probably going to focus on the returns, right? So I can take this graph here, and I can, in the top right corner on the gear, click Save to Dashboard. Each user actually has a personal folder. So if you could please just click on your name here on the left side. That's going to save the thing in your personal folder. Give a name, a title to this style. So let's say, in this case, it's gender analysis. And you can see that this folder is empty, so I don't actually have a dashboard right now. I can go and create a new one. We currently have two versions, so it's kind of like the standard dashboard version and the dashboard beta, which is going to be our new version. They do the same thing. They're both dashboards. It's more just a question of look and feel. So maybe let's try to pick the new one and see how that goes. When you select the type, you should get a pop-up that asks you for a name. So just go ahead and enter a name for that. I'm type, and that's going to add it to your folder. And as you click Save to Dashboard, it's going to add this style to said new dashboard. And I don't know if you're expecting a big change, but actually you just get a subtle notification here that says that your gender analysis has been added to the returns analytics dashboards. And you sort of have two options from here. You can either carry on creating explorers from this explorer, creating new tiles and keep adding them to this dashboard. Or what we'll do is just click on the actual name of the dashboard here, whatever name you've entered. If you click on that, it's going to bring you to said dashboard, where I'm very, very zoomed in here. So it might look a little bit strange, but essentially you have just one tile. And in the top right corner, if you're in the beta, just like me, you have this three little dot. If you're in the previous version, you'll have a button that says Edit. And simply by clicking on that, you'll be able to modify what you're looking at. So you'll be able to resize and move around things. And you'll also be able to add new tiles. So if I click on Add a Tile here, it's going to be visualization. It's actually going to open the same interface as before. And I can go and have a look at my Explorer, and you'll recognize the interface, right? It's the same interface. I can go and select some metrics. I can go and just pick things, total sales, return percentage, enter these things, and let's run it. Let's view this as a single visualization, maybe, and give it a name. Percentage returned items. And you go in and then save that. And that's going to add it straight away. And I can move it, place it in the right place, it where I want it to be, etc. And simply carry on in this way, being able to then add more tiles, etc. So if I wanted to look at, I'm just creating a few things here. By no means do you have to create the same report, the same dashboard as me. Feel free to experiment, later today or in the next few days, I believe. You'll be able to try your hand at creating this report and seeing how that works. Just adding a few metrics here, giving this a name, traffic source, analysis. Quite happy with this being a table. I can run it and check what it looks like. I can save it. Either way, it's gonna be working fine here. And maybe I'll just add a fourth visualization here, just for the sake of it, give a bit of variety. Let's see what's happening with different times period or something like that. Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting. So here's something that I didn't do. That you can't. You don't have to do, but you can do, and I didn't earlier. Is that within the dimensions that actually represent a time frame? So whether it's a timestamp or a date or an epoch or anything like that, Looker will automatically generate different time frames. And actually, on the right side in the menu, you can see all the different time frames that are available. There are a lot of them, including different fiscal options, and then splitting into seconds or days or minutes or etc. etc. In this case, I might want to look at day of week, or maybe month name, or things like that. And you can do that. You can use a time frame with any time dimension, make them available. By adding them, Looker really kind of automatically is then able to figure out how do I calculate these, regardless of which database you're connected to. Will automatically register all the ways of calculating these things. I just want to make sure that these changes get incorporated in my dashboard, in the fields that are available, etc. So I'm going to go and refresh the dashboard and then edit it again for my last quick visualization here. And maybe if you've had the time just to create anything really, that's great. This is a year on year. One thing that I typically do as well, just on the visualization side, when you see this like kind of bar just like down the bottom, it could be for missing data. It could be there's no data. So one of the options that is available is whether do you want to plot null values, and do you want null values to actually cause gaps in the data points, discontinuities. So I'll just save that. So quite simple 3-bit dashboard here. Adding all these styles together. Whoop. Pretty easy and simple to create, etc. Now, let's make that a bit bigger. One thing that might be is definitely interesting is kind of giving users the ability to interact with the dashboard. So I do want to show you this kind of filter option here, where this will look fairly different if you've selected, whether you selected the dashboard beta or the regular dashboard. But in both cases, you do have the ability to add filters. So if I wanted to filter by country, for example, I can do that, or I should be able to do that. Maybe not. There appears to be something. Save. Edit. Okay, something's not liking it. So what I'll do is I'll simply go go back to my original dashboard where that is not an issue. And you see it's basically the same, just like a slightly different menu here. But when I click on the filter, that is looks very different. So I was saying I could filter on my country based on a specific model. So you can go and select your own name model here. You can select the one Explorer that we've created so far, and the field that we want to use in this case is country. And then, do you want to have a default value? If you do, enter in something here, and then select which tiles you actually want to apply that to, right? And save. I could also add a second filter on the year, let's say. Date, and I would say is in the year 2019, 2018 add data. And again, do I want to apply that to everything, or maybe not to the year on year, since that wouldn't make much sense. And then in this case, pick your field that you want to filter on. So saving that will add them to my dashboard with some default values. Anyone that actually refresh or opens this dashboard now will have these filters apply by default, and will be able to actually go and modify the selection to pick what they want. By clicking on the run button, that's actually going to go and update each of the individual queries and send that over to the database to get the results. And there you see, like, the British people are very polite and scared to return items, so the percentage is actually a little bit lower than globally, for example. So that's that. So I'll have one last thing to talk about, but before that, just a quick summary. So Looker here is connected to a BigQuery database. You can, and if you had your own instance, you can obviously connect that to your own BigQuery. You can connect that to any database of your choice. Based on that connection, we would go and create a model, which is going to A, represent the information that is in that database, but B, you would enrich it by defining new dimensions, new measures, new tables. You can create what we call derived tables that allow for more complex multi-steps SQL calculations. And then all of these elements that you create are then made available to the business users and or developer users to be able to use, right? Whether you want to use them through the UI, whether you want to use them through API calls, essentially that makes the data available for usage through graphs, dashboards, emails, embedding, etc., etc. Now, all the work that I've done tonight, and hopefully the work that you've been able to do as well, is actually not available to anyone else. So you might notice that if you have by accident left your developer mode, there's nothing here, right? And that is because the way that Looker is actually version controlling the model is through Git. So to actually be able to expose the work you've done to users, regardless of whether they are developers or business users, the way that's done is through Git integration. So you need to actually connect this model to a Git repository of your choice. And by doing so, you'll be able to validate, commit, and deploy the work that you've done, which makes it available to other users, right? So especially in this next phase here, this next part, we'll be adding some kind of actions, ways of interacting directly with the data that expand outside of Looker, right? That would be, you would want to be connected to Git before you start doing those things. Otherwise, you would be doing all that work just for yourself. And when you are connected to Git, that also allows other developers to collaborate with you, right? So that's why you want to be doing that, because Looker is a collaborative tool. Looker is about having that governance that is shared across the developers and across the business, so that everyone speaks the same language and everyone can make sure that they are looking at the same metrics and the same number. And all of that is enabled by the work that you do in this model, because that's really the heart, the core of Looker that is then powering everything else that is possible. So Imran Hussain, I think I would like to pass it back over to you guys, unless there's any questions that you think I should be looking into before doing so. But otherwise, I want to thank everyone for joining me and typing along despite the few issues. Do share your feedback. If this was a disaster, we need to know about it, because then we won't do it again. If actually after the few snags it was great, then we could in the future do more advanced development and address more specific use cases.
Thank you, Sebastian, for a really great session, very informative, and you covered quite a lot there. And yes, as you said, it's a bit of an experiment given the format of delivering this and the inherent challenges of the medium. So thank you, Seb. There is a question I think that we can be good to get your thoughts on. So for everybody's benefit, there have been questions coming in via Slido, and we have been attempting to address those questions within Slido. So if you have asked a question, do check the archive section within Slido for answers. And if you need to do a follow-up question in Slido, feel free to shout them out. So the question that there is outstanding, Seb, is really around the alignment between LookML and, say, BQ SQL, standard SQL. So if Google enriches standard SQL, say in BigQuery, with a statement or extension, wherever it may be, what is the typical kind of latency or adoption pattern with LookML?
Yeah, that? So there isn't any, essentially, right? So there's kind of two use cases. The first use case that is very straightforward is, say there is a new function, right? So suddenly they've added a way to calculate a median or percentile or something that didn't exist previously. As soon as that is available in BigQuery or in your project, if it's a beta feature, for example, then you would be able to leverage it directly in the LookML. If it's something a little bit more complex, so let's say when, for example, Google added BQML, so BQ machine learning, to BigQuery, that did require us to adapt by adding a couple of parameters to the LookML. The good news there is that, well, now that we are part of Google, but to be honest, already beforehand, we have always had a very tight alignment, so that by the time GCP actually releases and announces and releases this feature, they are already compatible and available in Looker as well. So there's no delay there.
Great. Thank you, Seb. And without further ado, then, we will move to the second part of the class, which is extending Looker Analytics with GCP. So the returners to this, I will kick off by introducing the concept, talking through some of the framework and what are the different possibilities of getting it done. And Saeed will then actually do the practical walkthrough of the class for this part. So on that note, let's move on. Right, so in terms of integration, there's a whole variety of integration patterns that we can use, that we can leverage from Looker in order to tap into the GCP data services that are available. So there's a whole variety here, which to my mind is fairly comprehensive. How we tap into those and the way we would leverage them from Looker depends very much on the nature of the service. But suffice to say, there are ways either through native ingestion through BigQuery or direct ingestion from Looker, with which we can leverage a broad gamut of GCP data services. In terms of this particular class, we'll be looking at Google Cloud Data Functions, and along with a Looker functionality called Looker Actions, which we'll talk about. So for those of you who may not be too familiar with Cloud Functions, a elevator level sentence statement is these are scalable, serverless, fully managed compute functionality within the Google Cloud Platform. So within Cloud Functions, you can write generally speaking, simple single-purpose functions that are attached to events from a complementary component. And within the Cloud Function, using a variety of runtimes that Cloud Functions support, but within, say, Python, which is the example that we use, we can actually ingest an event with data, and then from within the programmatic environment of the Cloud Function, we can pretty much do anything we want to do, anything we want with that. So that's going to be the aspect of GCP that we'll be looking at in this class beyond BigQuery, which Seb already gave a demonstration of. So in terms of the business scenario, we're going to be looking at something called closed loop analytics, and I use the term advisedly because actually it now means different things in terms of jargon. What we'll be referring to, and the context that we'll be using it in, is how efficiently we can apply analytical insights that are surfaced in Looker into a relevant business process to give us efficiency and agility in a integrated manner. So the idea is that the tighter the loop becomes, the more agile your business becomes. And what we really want is an approach which is technically flexible and ideally low effort in terms of being able to connect and leverage what Looker does, or what we surface from Looker as a data-driven outcome, into a business process. And that business process could really be anywhere, doing anything. So in this particular slide, you can see some examples in terms of host applications that would be associated with various parts of running an organization. And the idea being that from a appropriate analysis within Looker, doing whatever it does, a context can be pushed across into a business process easily and quickly, hence the closure of the loop. So for this class, we'll be looking obviously at Looker and Google Cloud, and more specifically within Google Cloud, we'll be looking at Cloud Function in combination with BigQuery. So we have some familiarity to varying degrees with BigQuery. As I mentioned, Cloud Function is a serverless compute framework that comes, that is one of the options that GCP offers. We'll be looking at that in the practical section of the class. On the Looker side, we'll be using something called actions. So as a quick introduction to actions, we essentially use actions for three things from a analytics perspective. One is to take action, real-time action on trends or insights that have been surfaced from Looker. And that's the theme that we'll be extending in the class. Other usages of actions are to communicate or collaborate on your insights within the team or your business function or within the organization. And finally, it's pushing out a analysis in terms of an output to reporting recipients. So that could be in terms of a scheduled or a triggered delivery of reports to a population that's been defined as a group or individuals. So that said, what exactly are actions? So I'm going to give a very helicopter view of the way that we'll be using an action in relation to a dashboard. So looking at the slide from the left, if you look at the constituent elements of a dashboard, which are made of dimensions and measures that feed into a view that could be from your database or enriched with logic in LookML, those would feed into your tile and parent dashboard. The user's done various bits of analysis, and based on analysis, you want to pass a context to a target system. And by context, we're talking about specific points of data, data point or data points, which an action allows us to push across to a target system as a JSON payload, and that's done in a very flexible, loosely coupled manner using a RESTful API approach. In terms of Looker as an application, there's a whole host of actions and integrations that come out of the box, which can be used straight away for those particular tools and ecosystems. But very importantly, they're not simply limited to what's pre-canned. We can build your own ones out of the box, and that's exactly the example that we'll be doing, going through today very shortly. There are two types of actions. One is a data action, which is passing via using a context from a dashboard that can be passed to a target application using the data action object, and that's done using a could be embedded within the dashboard in some kind of scripted manner, or it can be done using a user-driven prompt or trigger on the actual UI, which is what we'll be doing today. There's another form of actions, which are action hubs, and this is really where you take actions to the next level, and you can implement your own repository, as it were, of actions, their own custom actions or logic within those, and it's a more systematic way of extending integration from the dashboard layer using the action approach. So in this class, we'll be doing the data action, which essentially will be passing a context as a parameter from a looker field, and that will make more sense as a statement as we go into the demo. Right, so what does our scenario look like? So on the look side, we have a dashboard. We'll be extending an underlying view with a action that is going to be triggered by a user, going to be activated by a user to pass across a data context as a JSON payload into a cloud function, and using the streaming API that BigQuery offers, push that data into BigQuery. So that's the action part of the scenario. And we'll see the feedback of that by actually seeing the results of that push of data from the action back into an analysis. So in this example, as I mentioned, we're using BigQuery, but that could conceptually be really any application, any process, and the action. So in a sense, you're using there's a possibility of using Looker as almost as a execution platform driven by the analytics that is being that Looker is being used for. So that's a bit about that. In terms of the overall steps of the class, as Said mentioned earlier, there's a bit of code here, but you'll see this in the Markdown page, which you should all have access to, and we'll be diving into shortly. But essentially, we'll be going through the following 4 steps, which is adding an action parameter to an existing view file. So that view file is essentially your existing analysis. We will create a cloud function from scratch in GCP. So that will be unnecessarily a bit of a show and tell, but you'll have the code and you'll be very easily be able to replicate that within your environment. And once the cloud function has been deployed, we can trigger the cloud function in terms of the form-driven UI on the dashboard. And finally, we will be seeing the update, the result of that push of data to the target system, target data store, which in this case is BigQuery, and also see the results of that back in LookML using tile that's been designed off the back of that. So that's essentially what we're doing and how we intend to go about it. On that note, I will hand over to Saeed to take it away.
Thank you, Imran. So, hello everyone. Today I'm going to take you through what Imran described. So let me just log in first. I assume you guys are already logged in from the previous demo. So if you're logging in for the first time, or if you've already logged in, this should be the landing page where everyone should ideally land on. If you already are on the session, then you can access this landing page from your develop and choosing the GCP Masterclass project. So this landing page is here under Masterclass welcome markdown file. So if you've already read this, you'll note that there's like a link for the Q&A as we've mentioned earlier. But I'll draw your attention now to this link here, which is the material we're going to use for this demo session. So click on this link. It will take you to the code snippets document. So I'll do that now. Cool. So hopefully everyone has managed to access this page. If you have any trouble at any point within this demo, please do let us know through the Slido page, and we'll endeavor to solve it. If not, just bear in mind that this class is fully recorded and you'll have ample time and a chance to try this all out later on. So as Imran mentioned, we have our cloud function that we want to create that is going to be the endpoint for which the data action will send the request. So we have our cloud function here that we've already typed earlier. I will copy this. Actually, just so everyone's clear, this specific part is not exactly follow along, but if you do have access to your own Google Cloud project, then yeah, feel free to also follow along. But otherwise, for everyone else, don't worry about it. Just follow along, and you'll try it later on. So I'll copy this part, and I'll switch tabs to my GCP console. So on this GCP console, I've already actually opened Cloud Functions. If you land on the homepage, you should be able to see Cloud Functions under the Compute tab, or you can just search it. So right now I want to create a Cloud function. So I'll click on the Create function. Okay, so on the Cloud Function definition page, you'll see the following input elements. So the first being the Cloud Function name. Give any descriptive name. I'll call it data action. Next thing is the memory allocation you're going to provide to your Cloud Function. As Imran mentioned, this is an instance of compute, so it's going to require some memory allowance. So because actually this Cloud Function is very minimal, has a very minimal memory requirement, I'm just going to go for the least amount of memory possible. So I'll choose the 128 megabyte. And for the trigger, you can leave it as the default HTTP. You have other options, but currently, as we are going to send a HTTP request from within the Looker data action, we're going to leave that as is. Do note this URL. This is the trigger URL that we're going to copy and paste inside our LookML data action parameter, and that's how Looker is able to find and the endpoint to send the data context, the JSON data context, which Imran mentioned a bit earlier. On to the next thing, we have the authentication. So in our case, we are going to actually tick this, which usually is not advisable. As you can see, let me zoom in actually, in case I realize this is actually tiny. This will allow unauthenticated invocations, meaning it's going to be public. So anyone with this data action URL can be able to send data to your BigQuery data tables. However, just for a quick and easy solution here, I'm just going to use this, but otherwise, you will need to provide fine-grained IAM roles such that the invoker is a trusted user or a trusted service account that you created. Or if you'd like to go the network route, then you can give VPC service controls so that certain IPs are able to kind of trigger your cloud function. So, but now just to avoid the hassle of creating those IAM roles and whatnot, I'll make it unauthenticated, but I'll delete it as soon as possible. So for the source code, we're going to leave it as the inline editor, but we'll change the runtime to Python because our code, which we copied, let me just copy again in case I copied something else, is Python. So let me go through this code quickly. If I can actually do it. So this is a piece of code, very short, simple function called annotation. You'll note that BigQuery library is imported at the top, as we'll use the BigQuery client to be able to actually get the table references and also send the rows to insert. So here, the thing to note is the dataset ID. You'll need to specify the name of your BigQuery dataset. This is an already existing dataset within our BigQuery instance called the look. And the table ID is a new table that you will have to define, and you'll specify the table ID here. And these are actually request variables from within Looker, which we will define later on. So here we're grabbing the two things, a product ID and whether an item is to be placed on promotion. Actually, I'll describe this later on in the data action section. But what's important to note here is you're inserting these two variables that come from Looker, but also you're adding a current timestamp. This is important because BigQuery is append only. So in order to avoid duplicates when you're doing your analysis within Looker, you can add this record timestamp, and that will help you avoid duplicates because you can't update your BigQuery table rows. Cool. So now you're going to insert these rows, and you need to return a success statement in your return JSON. This is important for Looker to be able to actually exit successfully or give you an error message if it was unsuccessful. So something else that is important, because we're using BigQuery here, you need to specify it as a dependency, so that when the function is invoked or deployed, then the function will actually install this BigQuery library first. So I'll copy this. It's again in the code snippets under the note section. I'll copy this and paste it into my requirements.txt. So that should be good to go now. Press OK there. And for the function to execute, the default is hello world, but I'll just use my function that I called annotation. Paste that in, and that's it really. We are good to go. So that will take some time to create, which is why I already created an existing cloud function. So we'll just proceed with our demonstration, and we'll use this already existing cloud function. So if you are able to follow along with me on the GCP side, then great. If not, you can always try this later. But we can use my cloud function for the next bit, which is actually adding the data action inside our lookml code. So I will copy this part, and now I want you guys to go on develop and switch on development mode. If you already, I assume everyone is already on development mode, you should see this nice purple color on the nav bar. So I'll have you go to the GCP Masterclass project, which we already created. If you see other projects here or different projects from the ones I have, don't worry about that. You should all have access to this one, the GCP Masterclass. If not, please pop us a question in the Slido. So GCP Masterclass, let's go. So this will take us back to this page where you can see your documents, your models, which we have already created. It's going to be similar to what you did earlier because it's mostly the same tables, but with an added piece of code. While here, we only care about adding the data action. So please proceed to the views dropdown and head over to the product view. And here we will add our data action. Let me zoom in here as well. Close the quick help real quick. Yeah, so we'll add the action to the dimension ID, which is the product ID. So add a new line after line 9 and paste our code. So let me walk you through this action lookml parameter. So the action lookml parameter is defined as follows. You have the action keyword, and then after that you have the first is the label. So this is the label you will see when you are trying to kind of trigger the action itself. This is nice to have so other users when they're trying to trigger your action can find it or can also understand what it is. So choose a descriptive name. In our use case, we're going to actually trigger an action when we determine that a certain product should be put on promotion based on some analysis. The next item.
Site?
Yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you zoom in a bit? It's a bit
yeah, of course. Thank you, Imran. So the next is the URL. I already pasted this in. This is the URL of the cloud function I had already created called looker annotation. Here you're going to paste whichever URL is going to handle this data action request. And then next is the param keyword where you have your data field. In our case, the name is product ID. I didn't use ID just to be more clear, but it's the product ID, which is going to be sent by the data action, and the value of the product ID. And the form parameters, this is what is shown to the user as a form when they're trying to trigger the specific data action. You'll come to see this later. When I'm creating, you'll see the name promotion, and you'll see this select drop-down with the label add to promotion and options for yes, or usually we'd have yes, no, but in this case, it's just a yes. So if you deem that a certain product needs to be sent to this promotion basket, then you just click the send. So that's our data action. I'll have you guys save this. So if you're on the GCP Masterclass project, you'll actually be already connected to a Git repository. So you can actually, if you choose, validate the lookml if it's fine, and you can commit your changes. Let's say I added action parameter products, something descriptive, and then this will push changes to your branch. So each one of you guys should have their own branch. I have my one here, and once you're done, if you want everyone to have access to your specific changes, you can open a pull request, and then someone would deploy to production. But if you're an admin like myself, you can deploy directly to production. But yes, now we have this saved. Everyone should have it on their own branch, as I just described. I will have you next go back to the code snippets, and here we'll have done section 1 and section 2, and next is the actual scenario, which is saved as a board. So please follow the URL that is defined here. So this board has basically one dashboard added to pin to it, so you can add multiple as you choose. So we'll go to this date action. I hope everyone is following. If not, you can do this later. What you get with this dashboard, maybe I zoom out of it. It's just so you see the axis. So yes, here we have two basic tiles in our dashboard. On the left, we have a scatter of total sales grouped by the product categories. So each circle here is sized, as you can see, the different sizes is sized by the average sales in that group, and each circle is a different product. So let's say the scenario is someone within the organization wants to figure out what are the low performing items, and these items I'd like to maybe push them a bit more. So let's say these items down here in the lower quadrant are low performing because the sales figures are low and not many people are ordering them. So click on this. You'll have an explore drop down here. I'll have you choose the second option, which will show you all the entries, the 1,913 entries or whatever they are here, and that exist within this group. So this will bring up a drill down of that specific group, and that specific group, if you look up here under this filter, it's the maternity product category, right? So we have our product ID, the product name, and the total sales. And on the left, you'll see the product ID has an ellipsis. This ellipsis will give you an option to choose, I want to add this item to promotion. So let's go ahead and do that. And do you want to add this to promotion? You remember this we defined in the date action parameter. We'll go ahead and say, yes, please do that. That was quick. But hopefully, if you notice that these items now, there were 5 before, let's actually do that again. It's 6 now. We want to add a different item. Let's choose the lowest item here. We'll do that real quick. Promotion. Yes, let's add this to promotion, 14649. Now we have 7 items in promotion. What this tile does, it basically pulls the data live from our data store, the table that is being updated by the cloud function, by the data action cloud function. So if you come here, we have the promotion products, which is the data table. So if we query, I'll show you guys the latest item that we added. Maybe order by record, but yeah, you can see these items here we added recently. So our data action successfully sent the specific products that we want to place on promotion, and someone can come and filter and see these products that are on promotion, and you'll see them here. So you'll note that there's 7 items here, but here there's more. There's 9 items, right? So that's where that timestamp came in handy. So there's duplicate items like 8045 and 14333. These items are not replicated more than once, as I said earlier, because we have, avoided the duplication by adding a timestamp. So what have we done today? In summary, we created a cloud function which serves as an endpoint for which we send the data actions context as a request, and we define the context inside our lookml view file, the product view file, and that action becomes available to you whenever you pull the specific ID where you defined it, in our case the product ID. So this will always be available wherever you use it. You'll have the option to place something on promotion, and once you've placed something on promotion, that gets sent into our BigQuery table that we defined in our cloud function, and you're able to feed that back into the second stage of your analysis here. Thank you guys for joining me in this quick demo. I hope you gained some value, and let us know in the Slido if you have any questions or any feedback, and I'll hand back over to Imran.
Said, thank you for the excellent lesson and walkthrough, and hopefully everyone got a taste of the tremendous possibilities that actions can give you from a BI analytical context in terms of closing the loop and making things happen on the execution side, driven by your the analysis of your data and really surfacing the value of your data to get things done quicker and faster. So that said, we will wrap up. So a caution note, just to reiterate what Said mentioned already, that if you do this in your own environment, be aware that using a unauthenticated invocation as a setting on the cloud function really opens up the functionality of the cloud function for anybody to call, and in a production environment or any business ready environment, you would normally wrap that around with a combination of IAM security and VPC service controls. So that said, next steps. So firstly, it's been a real pleasure for us and the team, Seb, Said, to do this. As Seb mentioned, it was a bit of an experiment doing this at this scale, and I'm hoping everybody got value out of this. As mentioned, this class will be recorded. It will be posted on the YouTube channel, the Google Cloud Data User Group channel, and the exercises should be straightforward enough, hopefully, for you guys to do with the environment that you have while you have it, or do within your own spaces. For those of you who haven't tried Looker, or this is your first taste of Looker, then you can get a trial directly using this link. You're very welcome to get in touch with us as well, Agilexi, in terms of any Looker-related or BI or data, indeed, related issues or challenges that you have. And you can contact us via this link. And and also via these contact details. There's been quite a few registrations that were done after the commencement of the class. For those of you or anyone who's watching this on a on-demand basis, if you do want access to a Looker environment to run through some of the exercises that activities that Seb and Said went through, then drop us a note here, and we'd be very happy to oblige and do what we can to get you up and running on Looker. So on that note, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Said. Thank you, Seb. It's been great. Any closing words, Seb, Said, from your side?
It's been an absolute pleasure. I believe this is probably my first taste of this. I hope the nerves didn't come out, but I hope you all enjoyed it, and I look forward to the next one. And all the best, guys. Enjoy your journeys, your Looker journeys.
Thanks, Said. Seb, we are lip
Thanks
reading
for
here.
having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, we can. There's a bit of a lag, but we got it. We definitely got it. Well, thank you, Seb, as always. It's always great to do these things with you. So stay safe wherever you are, and until next time, enjoy your Looker and anything else that you do. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.